Right now, as you are watching this, something is happening underneath the ocean. Not submarines, not fish, something you use every single day and have probably never thought about for a single second. Every message you send, every video you stream, every time you check your bank balance or make a payment or send an email to someone on the other side of the planet, all of it is traveling through cables. Physical cables lying on the ocean floor. Not satellites, not wireless signals bouncing through space. Cables on the seabed, thousands of meters underwater in the dark. And almost nobody knows this. This is the story of the infrastructure that runs the modern world. Who built it? Who owns it? What happens when it breaks? And why the most powerful countries on earth are fighting over it. So let's start with the basics. Imagine a cable about as thick as a garden hose. That's it. That's what we are talking about. Not some enormous pipe, not a massive industrial structure. A cable roughly the width of something you would use to water your plants. Now take that cable and stretch it across the floor of the Atlantic Ocean, or the Pacific, or the Indian Ocean, thousands of meters deep, in complete darkness, under enormous pressure. That cable carries light, pulses of light, moving through tiny strands of glass so thin, so pure, that light can travel through them for over 100 kilometers before it even starts to fade. And those pulses of light are your data. Your WhatsApp message to your family, your colleague's Zoom call, a hedge fund's billion-dollar trade, a hospital pulling up a patient's record, all of it converted into light, fired through a glass thread, across an ocean floor, and reassembled on the other side. All of this in milliseconds. There are over 500 of these cables in the world today. Stretched end to end, they cover 1.7 million kilometers. Enough to wrap around the earth more than 40 times. And they carry 99% of all internet traffic between continents. 99%. Satellites handle the rest. Satellites are slower, more expensive, far lower capacity. The cables are the internet. That's not a metaphor. That is literally what the internet is made of. Now the obvious question. How does a cable end up at the bottom of the ocean? Picture a ship, not a warship, not a cargo tanker. A quiet, slow, specialized vessel built for nothing else. Inside its hull, coiled into tanks the size of swimming pools, sits thousands of kilometers of cable, loaded over weeks before the ship even leaves port. The ship sails the route slowly. The cable feeds out from the back, sinking gradually as the ship moves forward, settling onto the ocean floor like a thread being dropped into a glass of water. Now think about what that actually means. Someone has to plan the route in advance, survey the seabed, find the path of least risk, avoiding underwater mountains, avoiding earthquake zones, avoiding the busiest shipping lanes. Then lay the cable across thousands of kilometers of open ocean with enough precision that it lands where it is supposed to land. Near coastlines where fishing boats and anchors are a danger, the cable gets buried. A machine plows a trench in the seabed. In deep water, a kilometer down or more, it just lies on the floor. No trench, no casing, no protection. Just a garden hose in the dark, holding the world together. Here is the part that surprises most people. This isn't a modern invention. This didn't start with the internet. This didn't even start with the telephone. In 1850, engineers laid a cable under the English Channel connecting England and France. Telegraph signals, Morse code, the first message ever sent under the sea. It broke within hours. A French fisherman pulled it up, thought it was seaweed, cut off a piece, and took it home. They fixed it. They kept going. And 8 years later, in 1858, there was a cable across the Atlantic Ocean. Queen Victoria sent a message to the American president. It took 17 hours to transmit 98 words. But here's what mattered. It worked. For the first time in human history, two people on opposite sides of an ocean could communicate faster than any ship could sail, faster than any messenger could ride. The world suddenly felt smaller, and everyone understood. This changes everything. So they kept building more cables, better cables, spanning more oceans, reaching more countries. When the telephone arrived, the cables carried voices. When computers arrived, the cables carried data. The copper wires became fiber optic glass, capable of carrying not thousands, but trillions of bits of information per second. The technology changed completely. The idea never did. There has always been a cable at the bottom of the ocean, connecting the world, invisible to almost everyone who depends on it, for 175 years and counting. So, what happens when one of these cables break? It happens more than you think, around 200 times a year. That's roughly 4 times a week. Somewhere in the world, a cable goes down. And most of the time, the culprit isn't an earthquake, isn't a military operation, isn't some dramatic act of sabotage. It's a fishing net. Trawlers dragging nets along the shallow seabed. Ship anchors dropped in the wrong place. Around 86% of all cable faults come from human activity. And most of that is completely accidental. The most important infrastructure on the planet taken out by someone who didn't even know it was there. When a cable breaks, a repair ship gets called out. It sails to the approximate location of the fault, which engineers can calculate from the shore by sending a pulse of light down the cable and measuring how long it takes to bounce back. When the ship arrives, it drags a large hook along the seabed until it catches the cable, hauls both ends to the surface. In a room that looks like a laboratory, engineers splice in a new section, test it, lower it back down in a gentle loop so it doesn't kink on the way down. The whole repair, once the cable is on deck, takes around 16 hours. But getting there and getting permission to be there can take weeks. That word, permission, remember it. In February 2024, 4 cables in the Red Sea were cut. Houthi militants had sunk a cargo ship, and its anchor dragged across the seabed and sliced through the cables on the way down. The damage knocked out 70% of data traffic between Europe and Asia. Over 100 million people across Africa and the Middle East saw their internet slow to a crawl or disappear entirely. Repair ships were ready, but the Red Sea was a war zone. To fix the cables, ships needed permission to enter Yemeni waters. Yemen has 2 governments. Neither was cooperating easily. International diplomacy had to happen before a single splice could be made. The repairs took months. And this is the thing that governments and militaries have quietly started to understand. These cables don't just carry data, they carry the global economy. $10 trillion in financial transactions flow through them every single day. and they pass through choke points, narrow stretches of ocean where dozens of cables are bundled together, running through the same geography. The Red Sea, the South China Sea, the waters around Taiwan. Damage one choke point at the right moment, and you don't just slow down the internet, you freeze the financial markets. You cut off military communications. You isolate entire countries from the rest of the world. And the legal framework protecting all of this, it is built on a treaty from 1884. Here's what changes everything. For most of history, undersea cables were owned by governments or by large telecom companies, shared infrastructure, jointly maintained, treated as public utility. That world is gone. In 2010, Google, Meta, Microsoft, and Amazon, they collectively owned one long-distance cable. One. By 2024, they owned all or part of more than 30. Today, those four companies alone control around half of all undersea bandwidth on the planet. Google now solely owns more than 10 cable systems. Meta recently announced a single cable, Project Waterworth, that will run 50,000 kilometers, the longest ever built, connecting the United States directly to India, South Africa, Brazil, and beyond. And look at the route it takes. It avoids the Red Sea. It avoids the South China Sea. It skips the choke points entirely. Because these companies have been paying attention. They have watched cables get cut in war zones. They have watched repairs get held hostage to political negotiations. And they have decided they are not going to wait for governments to solve it. They are building their own internet, not a metaphorical internet, a physical one. Their cables, their routes, their rules. The infrastructure that the entire world depends on is quietly moving out of shared hands and into the hands of a small number of private companies that answer to no government, no treaty, and no public institution. So here's where we are. The modern world runs on cables that almost nobody thinks about. Cables thinner than your arm, lying unguarded on the ocean floor, carrying everything, every message, every transaction, every piece of data that holds the global economy together. They break 4 times a week. They get fixed by a global fleet of 62 ships. 62 ships for 1.7 million kilometers of cable. And now the most powerful companies on earth are quietly buying up that infrastructure, designing new routes, avoiding the danger zones, building a version of the internet that they control, not governments, not shared institutions, them. The next time you send a message to someone on the other side of the world, pause for 1 second. That message is about to travel through a garden hose at the bottom of the ocean. And the people who own that garden hose are becoming some of the most powerful actors on the planet. Nobody elected them, nobody regulates them, and almost nobody knows they are there. This is the Far Observer. There are more stories where this came from.